All right. Welcome back to Pan-African Perspectives, your weekly live stream where we dive into the real-life experiences of visiting Africa, moving to the continent, investing in African ventures, buying land, and all with the ultimate goal of advancing Africa and restoring its rightful place on the world stage. Our mission is to support an independent Africa and empower African people, whether on the continent or in the diaspora. So if you're currently living in Africa, you've recently migrated, your ancestors were trafficked during the Middle Passage, or you're a foundational Black American, this live stream is for you. I'm Joe Hatagwa, your host and the founder of Authentic African. And each week I'll share my experiences living, traveling, and investing in Africa. And from time to time, like today, I'll be interviewing others who have made the move to the continent, offering their insights and their stories. Today's conversation is going to be a little bit different because today we are talking to Maya King about her move to the continent and her decision to leave the continent. Maya and I have spoken on many occasions on the live streams. I think we've done 2 or 3 live streams and we've done an interview. So you guys can go back and check those out. I'll put those links in the description on YouTube if you guys want to go back and check out the previous interviews that we've done. And we've also done a couple of tours of properties when we both were living in Ghana. So we are both in the States and we're going to talk about it. So without further ado, let me bring on Maya King. Hey, Maya.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for doing this. I know this is a long time coming. It's been a few weeks, a few fits and starts. So I appreciate you being patient and coming on the holiday, by the way. It is President's Day. So yes. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm happy that the stars aligned.
Absolutely. So Manelik's in the building. Mokenji is in the building. All right, cool. Like, tag, and share, as they say. Okay, cool. So Maya, I think, one of the things that you and I just talked about and something that we talk about a little bit more often, and I got this concept from Ya, or YOA, who's a subscriber and friend, who said we need to normalize people moving back if they have to, right? You and I have spoken about the idea of, my original thought process about people leaving the continent after moving to the continent was that we failed, right? It's that it's a failure to have made the move and to leave. And so many people make the move to the continent for specific reasons, and they make the decision to leave for specific reasons. So I want to get into that with you. But before we get into your move back to the States, I want to go back a little bit. We don't need to go back to your full background because we've done that on more than one occasion. But I do want to talk to you about your initial decision to move to Ghana. What led you to move to Ghana in the first place, and when did you move to Ghana?
Sure. So we spoke a little bit about this, but I, in 2020 or 2019 into 2020, I went through a very traumatic experience in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And, obviously right on the tail end of that, here comes a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I was in Ghana 2019 for a friend's wedding, but it coincidentally happened to be during the whole year of the return. I visited Ghana before that, and, I had already been tuning into Ghanaian politics, and, in the back of my head, the idea of building a life in Ghana. So when the pandemic came up and everybody's lives, went upside down, sure. I took a leap of faith. I was talking to friends that I have and had that lived already in Ghana or were also transitioning to Ghana. And, I decided to come out for 3 months, just see what it was like to actually live there, not during the party time. So I came in October and ended up staying for 3.5 years.
So let's talk about that. So now it's all coming back to you. I remember during our interview, our sit-down interview in that apartment, you mentioned that. So you came for 3 months, ended up being 3.5 years. So 3.5 years ended when? When did you leave the continent?
April 2024.
April 2024, literally the exact same month that I left.
Really? I
Yes,
didn't
you
know that.
came to Ghana the year that I came, and you left the exact same month that I left. We're also
That's
the same.
crazy.
Well, I won't say the other thing because I don't know age out there. So okay, so let's go back to that. So okay, so you were on the continent of Africa, specifically in Ghana. You had come for 3 months. You stayed for 3 years. Um, why did you continue to extend your stay after those 3 months? What was happening in your life that made you decide to continue to stay in Ghana after only expecting to be there for 3 months?
Well, I think that the day in January that I was looking to book my ticket to come back to States, thinking that, okay, the gig is up, gotta go back,
Yeah.
that was the day of the Capitol riots.
Mm.
And, I'll never forget the image of that guy with the horns on and the face paint. And
Yes, January 6th, 2021.
yeah. And I was just like, hold on a second.
Yeah,
I already have
PTSD.
PTSD, yeah, in the back of my, loading. And I was like, do you know what? Let me think about this for a second. And I think that day, something happened with the Wi-Fi either went out or the power went out. So I never got around to booking my ticket. But
Yeah.
I got a call from a friend. Um, she's a doctor in Ghana, and she's like, hey, um, my friend is moving here. We just met a realtor that is looking to start his own company, and he is looking to hire someone to help him start
Mm.
his real estate company. And we thought of you. And I was like, okay, God. And so, I think that's around the time that you and I met too, not much after that.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, let me go meet this guy, hear what it was about. And um, I realized that as I started to talk to people about my background in real estate here in States, like there's a lot of interest and there seemed to be like a space for me. And so of course, you get to move to Ghana and you get to like help start businesses. Of course, like let me figure it out. And I had a lot of fun. The entrepreneurship journey is not for the weak.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy. It is not consistent. It's
Sure.
tough, but it is thrilling. It's like being at a really fun theme park. And looking back, like from that day to the inroads I had made by the time that I did leave, I don't have any doubt in my mind that I was supposed to go to Ghana when I went to Ghana.
Mm. Yeah, and so so as you said, we met sometime in 2021. I was reaching out to folks to interview for the platform, and I also wanted to look at apartments because I was not really happy with the apartment I was in. And I had reached out to someone, and they mentioned that I should talk to you. And then what I noticed is like throughout the rest of that year, you had like this tour of interviews on all these different platforms.
It's
Everybody I knew, I
crazy.
interviewed you. Everybody I knew was interviewing you. And
It's
I was like,
crazy.
man, Maya's on a world tour right now. And the apartments that you always had interesting apartments to go look at. Like, you guys can go back and watch some of those real estate videos, those Ghana real estate videos. Even though I never ended up moving into any of them for reasons that had nothing to do with the apartments themselves, but my own situation that was going on. They were always really interesting and well received by people who watch those videos. So I definitely recommend everybody who's watching this live stream, after the live stream's over, go back and check out some of those videos. All you have to do is search on my channel, Maya King Real Estate. There's some shorts, there's longer videos. It's all there. Okay, so you meet this gentleman who's starting a real estate firm, and obviously with your background, having been in real estate in the States, it felt like a natural transition for you. And so that 3 months ends up becoming 3 years. You start doing you go on the real estate and the entrepreneurship journey. Entrepreneurship is difficult in general. It is
Mhm.
definitely difficult in Africa, right? So, I would love to know, like, from your perspective, right, as you're going through this journey, um, what were some of the challenges? You said it was like being in an amusement park, and I know that some of these rides have their ups and downs, right? So what were some of the challenges that you saw, um, you know, starting in a new industry, in a new location, and being a part of a new business in general?
Well, I would say that, real estate is a relationships business. So the challenge anywhere in joining a new real estate market is, your success is directly relative to the size of your network or community.
Yeah.
So, when I got there, I was blessed to, kind of join a group of very dynamic individuals and well-connected individuals. And so they directly contributed to my successes in landing clients and getting gigs and, making sales. Um, and that was really the momentum that kept me going for as long as I did stay. I would say by the end, though, there was the exact reason why you know things were dying out for me, because those relationships didn't last as long as I would have hoped, and
Yeah.
therefore the referrals that came out of those relationships also dried up as well. And that's actually the challenge in any industry that you choose to you know build,
Yeah.
join in, build. You have to have a network. You
Mm,
have to have community. And, I began to see, about a year before I left, it began to be very clear to me that my best market is Americans, African Americans, and foreigners. But and also the demographic I could be of the most service to would be African Americans or Caribbeans, people that are just following in the footsteps that I had, walked through, like the bushes that I had macheted to clear a path, those are the people I could help. And I realized to reach that market, I needed significant capital for marketing. And that was part of the reason why I decided I could return. I could build my network here and be more strategic to get in front of my intended market than being over there.
good point. I mean, I think our lives, are parallel in so many different ways. As we were discovering before we went live, like as you're talking, right, I feel almost exactly the same way. My challenge was generating income on the continent. I am a semi high income earner in the United States. I'm not so high of an income earner on the continent just yet. And I was having challenges figuring out how to expand a business without having a source of revenue to be able to accelerate that, right? And so as you mentioned, having a budget for marketing was required. So coming to the States helps you to get that. And the same for me, right? I went through the same thing. So I know exactly how you feel. And also right around the same time we both left, I think we both came to those realizations. You talked earlier offline when you and I were talking, and you mentioned the idea of, um, you know, you know, uh, when the higher power or God or whoever's watching, whatever everybody thinks, um, you know, closes some doors, he opens other ones, and you maybe had to make a pivot. What what was kind of the point where you came to the realization that I am going to have to make this move? And then how long after that realization happened did you actually make the move?
I would say executing on the idea to executing to return. It took a year. It took a
Okay,
full year.
really?
Um, into the start of 2023, I started to realize that I didn't find the community that I was looking for.
Mm,
Um, there are certain things that happened that made it really clear that the people that I had surrounded myself with may not have had my best interests in mind. They
mm,
weren't there to, they were my family. So like I was leaning on them for protection, for connection, everything,
mm,
I, like many diasporans, went through being robbed,
mm,
being beat up by a caretaker, like,
mm.
threatened by a landlord, like everybody else, and these are the people that I would call when things would go wrong. And, and not only that, but people that I would jam with when, it was time to jam.
Yeah.
And I began to see that I didn't make the community that I was looking for.
Mm.
And I went through a series of just harsh realizations. I would say the first 3 years, first 2 years and change was like a dream come true, a honeymoon. Like I was on cloud nine. I was having the best time, and
Mhm.
my highs were way higher than any of the lows that I experienced. And I went through like walking most places because I couldn't afford an Uber or a Bolt, or taking those motorcycles, riding on the back of a motorcycle 90% of the time to get A to B.
Yep.
I went through losses, um, and then I would say that last year was really tough. I was holding out, waiting for a specific deal to close, and it took me a while to realize that either I was being swindled out of the deal, like pushed out of it, or this person just wasn't serious. They weren't actually gonna make the acquisitions that I had put so much work into,
Sure.
packaging for this buyer. And not only was he going to purchase two properties, he wanted to hire me to oversee, like to be the owner's rep.
Right.
And he just, yeah, I have no clue what happened, but he strung me along though for a good year,
Yeah.
before I realized it's not gonna happen. And then, every single African American that goes over there, single beautiful African American, she goes through, her heartbreak in a relationship where someone betrays, or the lies come out, and
Mm.
so I went through that too. And then too, like when I was on my lowest moment, I kind of looked up and I realized there was only like one or two people I could rely on for any kind of help
Mm.
out of all the people I knew.
Right.
And I pivoted in a way because I was like, okay, well, let me try to help in different areas to offset my needs, right? And I did. I poured myself, and I would say that I decided to leave when I had gotten all the way to being invited by the Minister of Foreign Affairs to put together a group of diasporans and
Mm.
lead conversations about the support that's needed and the help that's needed. And, being invited to the meetings, at the beginning of, the December season where the police meets with the vendors and different organizations to talk about how to prepare Ghana, what to do different this year. And I was at the front row of all those conversations, and I just watched how two African American women, very intelligent, very powerful, very influential in their own rights. Here we are, we have this chance to get in front of the president of the country
Yep.
and petition for support and infrastructure that would make our lives different and everyone else. And I watched how they fought and tore each other down, and we never got far. And I
Mm.
watched how everyone else participated in that. And, I watched how Ghanaians kind of cluck their teeth like, see, Americans, they don't know how to unify over there, how they're going to come over here and work together. And that just showed me, it's like, yeah, this is going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be a
Mm.
real uphill battle. And I don't know how much more I'm willing to lose before I cut my losses. And I realized that if I wanted to live out the goals that I have and the vision that I have, you know, for, the way I envision myself in Ghana,
Mhm.
not materialistically, but as part of a community,
Mhm.
politically, I have to come back with numbers,
Mhm.
both in my bank account or other people's bank accounts, or representing numbers, because I can get to the top. I've done it already
Mhm.
in the last person, and even this one, I'm pretty sure I could. There's people I could, if I said, hey, I have this, get me a meeting. I'm sure I could. Um, but it's got to be. I realized. So I decided to come back and
Mhm.
start building those connections. And it's happened. Like, I've been
Yeah.
introduced to Ben Crump Jr. I've been like, I'm doing it, and I can see a path forward. But, any good businessman, any entrepreneur, you have a series of successes and failures before you strike gold.
Absolutely.
And, if Oprah Winfrey had taken her first failure as
Mhm.
okay, let me get out of this, she wouldn't be Oprah Winfrey today.
Absolutely.
Neither would Nelson Mandela, neither would Thomas Sankara. So we can't look at it that way.
Mhm.
as far as being a failure. We have to look at it as I'm a visionary, and something about what I'm doing right now is not getting me closer to my vision. So where do I pivot?
Yep.
And I think returning to the States for me was more of a pivot than I failed. Failing would be not being able to come back. Because
Mhm.
I have a passport. I can come back. You know, I have a family
Right.
that welcomed me with open arms and helped me
Right.
get situated and contribute to my success today. So,
Yep.
you know, it took me realizing that, like, okay, I need numbers. I need help. This is a big undertaking and I can't do it alone. I don't just want to be, you know, some chairman's wife, right? I want to do something. I want to be someone. I want to have legacy for my family and for my future family. And I feel like the time is still right.
Mhm.
I have to get in the right place. This place wasn't abundant anymore. When I first got to Ghana, the dollar was $5, right? $4 or $5.
5 CDs.
That's what I mean. Sorry. By the time I left, it was almost 19.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Ghana was drying up. Ghana is drying up. People are not balling the way that they were before. You know, so I'm sure there's another avenue for me. I can envision it.
Yep.
And I feel that coming back also was an opportunity for me to restore a lot of what I had lost there.
Sure.
Self-confidence, vision, beauty treatments, whatever it took, you know. And I feel successful that I've done that.
Well put. Yeah. So there's a lot there, and I want to unpack a little bit of that before we move on. Number one, you mentioned Ben Crump Jr. I am a person who reposts a lot of his content. He is a prominent civil rights lawyer. For those people who aren't familiar, because you said the name, but people may not be so familiar with him. So that's a big deal. So you've been working on your networking. So I want to speak to this a little bit because you mentioned you know, obviously it's not a failure to leave. And shout out to YOA, Ya is in the building, who was the one who said we need to normalize leaving if you have to leave, right? And I wish I was in Ghana when you were. I would love to connect with you and my friends who work on property. Well, Maya will be going back to visit, so you know, yeah, you guys will be able to connect, and I'll connect you too, by the way, because Ya is she's the great connector. That's what I would always say about her. Shout out to Lenora and Quadro and everyone. And by the way, everyone who's watching, so we are interviewing Maya King, who had lived in Ghana for 3 years. She made the decision to move back to the States, and she made a pivot. And we're kind of talking through what led to that process, right? She just kind of got us through, you know, some of the things that were happening over a year that kind of led to her making the decision to finally move back to the States. So just for those of you who are joining, looks like a bunch of people are joining right now and weren't aware of what the topic is. So that is the topic we are discussing today. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, who are just joining, Maya and I did at least 5 tours of properties when she was in Ghana and I was in Ghana. And we also did an interview, and we've gone live twice in the past. So if you want to hear more about her background and her story and see what we were up to while we were in Ghana, go back to the channel and just type in MAYAKING, and you'll find all the stuff that we did previously. So a couple things really quickly. So Aisha is saying it is really insightful to get these stories and these lessons so we can learn. Thanks for having her, Joe. Of course. Quadro says leaving is more than okay. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, so on that topic, so you you obviously learned a lot through the 3 years you were there in the role that you were in. And I had you on twice on the live stream. The title of one of them was how much is it to buy real estate in Ghana? And the other one is how to buy real estate in Ghana. And I think both of those are really both of those are questions that people ask me all the time. And so you know, obviously you learned a lot. So I do want to talk a little bit about how you plan to utilize that knowledge moving forward, right? You're not physically on the continent now, but as you mentioned, the goal is to be able to service those folks that are of the diaspora that are moving back and forth. So can you talk a little bit about what you learned along the way in terms of the laws and the processes for real estate acquisition and renting in Ghana, and how you can help other folks who are planning to move, rent, and buy in Ghana?
Absolutely. From firsthand experience and from working with so many clients, I would encourage anyone who's looking to buy in Ghana to very carefully define their why. The real estate market in West Africa is not comparable to the real estate market in the West, United States, or Europe, because you buy something based off of your ability to possibly resell it in the future or capitalize off of the future. There's financing infrastructure that's available here that's not available there, and stuff like that. So also too, like, the way that properties are deeded and warranted here is a lot more sophisticated than currently exists in Ghana. It is something that is evolving. National Association of Realtors is, endorsing realtors and entities. They're trying to introduce an MLS, but like, if you don't have a postal address yet, how can you possibly have the level of sophistication that we experience here in the United States when it comes to resources and comparative market analysis and appraisals and stuff like that? So, I would say if you're looking to buy right now, because you want a place to live when you're in Ghana, I would say work on an off plan project. So get with the developer, who's clear and free to have the land use, and purchase an apartment or a townhome in one of those. It should be in an area that's closer to the central part of Accra or within a reasonable commute to if you go way far out. I think we all heard of, like, is it Pokwase, the land thing
Yeah.
over there where some American was, promoting on social media, some big giving away, and everybody lost, so stay closer to the, for now,
Yeah.
give it another 5-10 years before, I would say buying far away from the capital city is really going to be in any way lucrative. I would say that you should engage a real estate lawyer there
Mm.
and in your country of residence and get them to speak to each other and give you advice. So that's a bit more, added to the cost of purchasing a home, but it's going to save you millions if you lose, instead of getting a property yanked out from under you after building towards it. So
Yeah.
that's something. And educate yourself before you go. Live in Ghana for a bit as a tenant.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
one of the things that I hope to do is I hope to offer real estate seminars and business seminars so people can come get knowledge on the real estate market, acquisitions, you know, determining the value, as far as resale goes of properties. I see a lot of developers. I toured so many properties, was asked by so many developers to market their properties as marketing luxury this, and it's like the worst quality building materials and
Mm.
finishing and flooring, but it's, $300,000 and I wouldn't have paid 80 grand for it,
Right. Right.
so get yourself a trusted real estate agent, and I would say your agent should reflect your lifestyle. If they
Mm.
never lived in the United States, that they're not going to be able to bridge the gap for you. And you're going to butt heads because there's going to be a bridge of experience or understanding.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you mentioned a lot. I don't think you want to give too much away because you will be
Yeah.
offering consulting for folks who want to consult with you. So, we'll share Maya's email here shortly, and you guys will be able to email her, and then she'll be able to set up a consulting session with you if you want to talk real estate with her in more detail. If you have any specific questions that are specific to your needs. There are a couple people just joined. I want to shout them out. Lenora, who I have now met with in Ghana and Sierra Leone and Brooklyn. She's the one person I have now met in multiple places. You are finally moving to Ghana this fall. Lenora and I have been talking about this process since she got her Sierra Leonean citizenship a few years back. So excited to see that you're making the move. We're definitely going to have to catch up and see what you decide to do. So Maya, you talked a lot about what you learned. You talked about what you plan to do in the future and how you plan to help people. And we've also talked about your decision to leave Ghana. Last year in November or December, 526 people got citizenship in Ghana. I was not aware that this was happening. Apparently you can be a part of a couple of groups and you would have been made known. And I know I had a bit of a fear, a little bit of FOMO, I guess, or this idea that I felt like I missed out. Like, did I leave Ghana too soon to have been able to take advantage of this? Because I had long already been in the States. I already spent a year living in Sierra Leone after I left Ghana. But I'm always interested to hear, and I've spoken about this on the platform, but what was it like for you? Because I think you and I both left the continent in April of last year, and in 6 months or 7 months later, 526 people got citizenship, many of which hadn't lived in Ghana as long as you or I did. So what did that feel like for you? What were your emotions like having gone through the experience of living through the honeymoon period, the challenging times, making a hard decision to leave, and then seeing those who stayed get citizenship?
Some people had just visited Ghana for the first time. They were there on vacation.
Right.
I went through levels with that. Like you
Okay.
said, there was a bit of FOMO, like, dang, did I leave too soon? Like, if I had just stuck it out 6 more months. No, I stuck it out for 3.5 years. I took it personally because there's a number of people I know who are closely, very closely influential to the president and never put my name in the hat, knowing what I had been through. Like, I took that very personally. It's like, you people call me friends and, oh, how's things going? Da, 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 da. Just want to get my business, but like the opportunity to really be helpful to me, you let me down, you know. And then, like I said, it kind of just felt like that was just something just to say it was done. There didn't seem to be any thought or planning into that. I know people in Ghana who had been there for years, 10 years, 15 years, contributed so much to Ghana, weren't considered or invited. So I think that that was a bit of like, anyway, I won't, throw shade at it. I will say that in the end, what good is the citizenship going to be for people who haven't figured it out? Is it going to be a waste of bureaucracy? You know, if you don't live there, if you're not planning to live there, it's just going to be you skipping the visa process, really.
Right.
And, easier to get your Ghana ID card and therefore SIM card when you're in town. But like, if you're not invested in growing Ghana and becoming a part of Ghana, like, what good is that citizenship going to really do for you? And also, like, it's not impossible to get citizenship, the old fashioned way. So I feel like everything happens at its right time. I don't think that anything is coincidence. And I feel like we talked about earlier, I grew up in a Christian environment. I read a lot of, religious allegory growing up, and one thing comes to mind is like Pilgrim's Progress. It's a classic piece of literature. And this pilgrim or this Christian is starting off as a baby Christian, and he's trying to get the road to heaven. And throughout this path, he's constantly meeting with all kinds of distractions to either get him off his path or make him feel like he's not going fast enough or not going the right way. But all those people, yeah, it might have been a little bit easier for them, or they might have had a way, and they all went the wrong way in the end. So, slow and steady wins the race. There's no shortcuts to glory. And I I felt some kind of way when it was happening, and it wasn't just once. Again, like later on,
300 people.
yeah, there was another round of those, and then at that point, I had already voiced to people that I knew, like,
Right.
so it's okay, easy come, easy go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure eventually Ghana will ask to give me citizenship. Mark my words.
Yeah. I mean, I share your sentiments exactly. Maybe don't know people as close to the situation, but Yeah, I mean, it was tough. And then I also know people who didn't get citizenship, who were refugees from other countries and were told you can't have citizenship from two countries. You can't already have citizenship in another African country. There were a lot of different logistical challenges. But that is Africa, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
we
true.
have our issues, we have our challenges. But there are a couple things that people were saying. I just want to acknowledge some folks because there are a couple things that people were saying. One, apparently Diallo, and this is Diallo from African Ancestry, did a long presentation on the topic and how people were selected. I guess you guys can go research that if you want to watch later. Aisha has also said there is no streamlined process and a lot of people were left out. Ya was just agreeing with you. Aisha was saying Sierra Leone is a place that has a streamlined process in place, which, by the way, is changing, but it looks like it's been finalized as of recent, which, we went live about that yesterday and last week. Just people sending words of encouragement. What is for you will not pass you by.
Yeah.
Also, the new administration, the economic situation will hopefully stabilize and more opportunities will come. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you about that because I was just curious about your thought process because I had my own. And
What was your thought process?
yeah, and I had my own thought process about it, and I had my own feelings, and it was tough because I was in Ghana like 3 weeks after it, and then 3 weeks before the next one. You know what I mean? For a little over a week, and I missed both windows. Wasn't even aware it was a thing, and so, but at the end of the day, as you said, there will always be another time in the future. Okay, so we talked about kind of everything from why you initially moved to Ghana, what your experience was like while you were there, some of the challenges, the struggle of making the decision to leave, and moving back to the States. Where are you at now, mindset wise, in terms of like what you're doing career wise? How do you feel back in the States? What are you doing? What are you up to? And then next we'll talk about plans for moving back. But I kind of want to just get to where you are today after making the move and coming back since April of last year. It's almost a year since you moved back. How are you feeling, and where are you mentally and I guess physically?
Yeah. So, I'm back in Florida. I'm back with my family. I'm back in the environments. I'm back at that salary. I would say that until this current election, I wasn't sure if I should be focused on returning to Ghana, to be
Mm,
honest with you. I
mm,
feel like I gave Ghana so much. I gave my experiences there so much. And I didn't feel that I was welcomed in the way that I would have hoped to be welcomed. But I think that, my mom watches a lot of YouTube on people who've moved to Ghana. So she doesn't have a very strong opinion. She's one of the main people telling me to come back,
mm.
that Ghana don't want African Americans there, like all kinds of stuff. And she's watched a lot. And, by force, I've had to listen to a lot of other people's accounts.
Sure.
And it hurts because like I feel that pain too. I went through so many things that they went through too. I just didn't necessarily put it on social media. I tried to only celebrate my good moments on my social media, because everybody has bad moments there constantly. I know of a family who adopted a kid, and to help the kid, and the mother and the kid died tragically. Didn't
Wow.
have to happen. So
Wow.
like I know that everybody has their struggles there. So
Mm,
I would only try to share my wins. And I would say that this current election though is making me go back to some of my thoughts, some of the vision boarding that I had done in that last year in Ghana when it became clear to me where I could be of best service. And I would say that I still want to go back to Ghana. I've wanted to come back, and I want to come back for my 40th birthday, so I let it slip. This past December, or at least for New Year's.
you said
But
it.
I
I didn't
did.
say it, by the way.
It's true. Well, I look good for 40, so
You do.
like.
You got
Anyway, I want to go back, but you know what? I want to go back as much closer to my highest self. I want to
Mm,
go back and I want to make things happen,
mhm,
not just for me, but for my family, for my future family, and for others who are embarking. I want to be what I didn't have while I was there. That
mhm.
had I had access to what I believe I could create, um, it would open up a world of opportunities, not only for Ghana, but for its children, right? So
Absolutely.
the continent's children. And I have a big game plan. I think I'm happy with it unfolding in divine timing. I'm
Mm,
not rushing it. I'm not racing it. Since I've come back, everywhere I go, I was preparing for a hurricane and I was talking to the guy from the electric company because, I manage luxury properties and I wanted to know what, the plans of the city were in the event of a hurricane. And somehow we ended up on the topic of how he is connected to a huge group of people underground who want to move to Africa
mhm.
and they want to talk to me about what they're doing. I go to the dentist just to get my teeth cleaned because, hey, it's time to get my teeth cleaned. The lady who's doing my x-rays has been sleepless for 3 months because she feels like God is calling her to go to West Africa. She felt Nigeria over Ghana, but being able to talk to someone or be connected to someone who's made it, who's experienced, like I said, I was talking to a client and the client's like, let me connect you with Ben Crump Jr. because you need to talk to him and he needs to talk to you. There's an
Right.
alignment there, and that's been the experience since I came back. So I feel like I've done the right thing. I feel like this stage is about empowering myself, taking care of myself to prepare for the next round. Because it might not be as fun or easy. It might be a bit more serious. And like I said, when I go back, I want to go back empowered. So I haven't given up on Ghana completely.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, so as I was saying earlier, we're aligned on a lot of things, right? We found out we're both born in the same year. So we are combined 80 years old on this live stream, you and I, which is
80
crazy.
years of life experience.
Yes. And so we both turned 20
International.
last year. And it was a year of major change for both of us. And I think when we were talking earlier, I realized, like I said, how aligned we are in terms of like our life path. And when we moved to Ghana, when we decided to leave Ghana, how old we are, our plans for how we plan to return to the continent. And so I hear a lot of your story in my story. And that was a main reason why I wanted you to come on to tell your story. I mean, as I've said so many times, I'm not going to be a person who posts. I try not to curse because my mom watches the live stream sometimes. To
I love.
but like the idea of talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, but so that people can have a full range of an understanding of what it's like to make the move, and then also to talk to folks who've made the move back and what where your mindset is, where you are. And I think it's important to talk to someone who plans to move back, right? Like you went there because you stayed for longer. We meant to be there for 3 months and stayed for 3 years. You didn't necessarily plan the move the way you can plan it now. However, you learned a lot through that process. In the same way that when I moved, I did it on a whim. It was a pandemic inspired move, didn't know what I was going to do. And I just stayed there. And of course, at some point, I realized that I also had to pivot and come back, raise the funds to be able to go back, as you said, as a higher version of myself. And so I appreciate your story. And I think so many people can probably learn from this experience. And that's really why I wanted you to tell your story and to help people understand what it could be like to move and to come back. So with that being said, um, what advice? I mean, you already gave some advice. You gave some advice. You told people to spend some time there first before they make any moves. But what advice? The last thing I'll ask you before we ask you about how people can reach you, what advice would you give to anyone planning to move to Ghana or West Africa, but specifically Ghana, since that's where you lived for a little over 3 years?
Yeah, so do it.
Mm,
I think that it's time. I think it's biblical prophecy, to be honest with you. It's been 400 years. It's time for us to return with great possessions. But I would say, so I watch people and they have this like theme of like going and living off of $1 a day. Don't necessarily do that. If you don't have that kind of lifestyle here, don't look for that over there.
Right. Good point.
And it's a huge adjustment, it's a huge, and it takes a lot out of you. Everything from where you live, the neighbors, the people you interact with,
Yep.
everything, is in that value range. And the other thing I would say is like, definitely go, but realize that you need to find like-minded people.
Mm.
And realize, give yourself grace that that's a process
Yep.
that takes time, that takes trial, and that takes error. But, if you're an American descendant of a slave, try to go over there and find the same, because there's, being able to sit and talk with a friend who's an artist and a jewelry designer from Chicago, and she's having the exact same experiences I was having with Lyft drivers or Uber or Bolt drivers. We just can sit there and talk about it, call each other, be like, "You're not gonna believe," versus if I called someone who came to Ghana every single summer and Christmas, and parents and uncles and aunts and grandparents speak Trioga, and you tell them, and then they'll just tell you, "Oh, that's Ghana," instead of being like, "Girl, I get how you feel,"
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's a big, it's a cultural gap.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that is strategic, but go over there and build community. And if your true goal is to live there permanently, let it go its time. When I first moved there, got there in late 2020, I met a fashion designer, and she has been moving to Ghana over 15 years
Mm-hmm.
before she became as established as she was when I was there. When I met her, it took her 15 years figuring out how to, have a job in States, go back and forth, build something in Ghana, figure out the correct market for it. It took her 15 years. And she's successful. It is not an overnight thing. It's not 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It is a lifelong process. And you gotta, like I said, know when to pivot. If this direction, you're searching for gold, in this direction, not finding anything, learn how to switch and keep looking for gold,
Mm-hmm.
but recognize the power of pivoting as is necessary. Yes, obviously visit.
Yep.
Visit outside of Detti December,
Mm-hmm.
go during the rainy season. Go when it's cold in Ghana. Can you believe it? Don't just hang out in Accra at Belle Afrique, or Ace or Twist, go outside of Accra. See and connect with the beautiful, diverse culture that is part of Ghana, and tell your stories.
Mm.
Because when you go there and you have an experience, looking back and sharing with someone from behind you, "Hey, this is what it was like when I came," and
Yep.
you prepare the next person to not have to deal with what you had to deal with and possibly be more successful. So I think it's time. I think the more people go and visit and start building, that's how we're gonna do it. How are people gonna be successful moving to Ghana? If we can learn to be unified here in that movement, and if we can go there and build places and habit spaces and broker businesses to service ourselves as much as Ghana,
Mm.
because no one else is thinking that way for us. You gotta go there and you have to observe what other demographics that have moved to Ghana, like the Lebanese, Korean, Italian, British, Nigerian, how do they go there? Lebanese don't go there and build businesses for Ghanaians, they build businesses for Lebanese. In people from India, the same. They all live together, they rent for each other, they have businesses where family members go back and forth, and they are established.
Mm-hmm.
That does not exist for African Americans. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we can be influential. So keep that in mind. Like, you wouldn't be just going for yourself, you're going for the greater good.
Mm. Well put. There was a lot there. So first of all, I love that you said move, but you also
Mhm.
mentioned moving is a process. I have an aunt and uncle who've been who've been planning to move to Sierra Leone over the last 10 years, and they look like they're going to be spending another 5 or 6 years in the process, but they've acquired a ton of land and they now have assets that they can live off of. So one of the pieces of advice that came is having a consistent income stream. Many people that I do meet there are homeowners in the States and they're getting paid rent, or they have other income streams that'll support them no matter how long they're there. So I think that's another piece. But you mentioned visit outside of Dirty December and don't just stay in Accra. I think that's super important just to get a feel for, because the country is not Accra, right? Number one. And number two, Dirty December is a thing that the rest of the year is not like that, right? So I think that's a really good insight. Tell your stories to help others, I thought was really, really good. I like that a lot. Find your community was big. I think, what's interesting is you mentioned, your friend that was from Chicago, that's a jewelry designer. My community actually happened to end up being other folks that were from other African countries that moved. And what I found that worked for me along those lines is I met people who had big groups and communities that they were a part of, and they brought me into their communities. And that really helped me to expand my my friend circle. So I got to put somebody on timeout. So yeah, I think that's huge. Finding your community is huge. And then the other thing I think, and I think that, first of all, I think that was probably the most important, because as you said, my experience and your experience may be similar, but I have been going to Sierra Leone, a country that is more challenged than Ghana, for 5 years prior to moving to Ghana, right? So for me, I saw everything as an upgrade, right? So if you and I are speaking, I may not feel you the way you want to be felt and heard when describing your circumstance and your situation. And although we both have a similar cultural experience being Americanized and growing up in the United States, we do have a different experience on the continent. And so I think that idea of having a community and people who are like-minded and specifically are having similar experiences are super important, because sometimes you need a sounding board, right? Or someone who can express that I understand what you're going through. So yeah, that was huge. And then the last thing you said is know when to pivot. That pivot piece, I think, is huge too, because for me, I had to pivot. I know a few other folks had to pivot. And I think to add on to that, pivot is not failure, right? As you said earlier, you are setting yourself up to come back as your higher self. You are working on things from outside of the country, but you do still plan to go back. And that's also an important piece, is that you do plan to go back. So I've met other people who have gone to Ghana and left, and they're done and over it. They're never going back. And so it was encouraging to hear that you are planning to go back. And, obviously you know that you have work that you want to do in order to be able to go back there with the numbers, as you mentioned. Okay. So with all that being said, because we're now coming up on an hour. And by the way, a number of people have joined the live stream, and I want to, this has been a good one and a lot of great engagement. Where can people contact you and find you online if they want to ask any questions about the real estate process or moving to the continent, just to know what your experience has been like, so they can have a bit of an idea what it could potentially be like for them?
Sure. So I don't know if there's a way to leave in the comment or the description. You can leave my email address if you like, but it's very simple. It's mayatamara@gmail.com, which means there's an A after every single consonant, you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is like MT King, and then you add 3 more G's at the end. And I'll get set up a little bit better. I think it's really taken, honestly, like this conversation with you, Joe, that we've been having for the past few weeks, for me to realize, like, it's not a failure to leave, and there's a way that I can still be of service here. You know, maybe the ideal outlook for me is to set up a life that's between here and Ghana until I retire, you know, versus just all in like I was thinking of before. Um, so, you know, I'll figure out my infrastructure, especially as I see how much interest there is in my services. But, you know, I think what I want to do is offer immediately like my consultation services, and I'd like to set up tours, cultural, spiritual, you know, business tours, educational tours, probably at the end of this year and into next year.
Absolutely. And so I just put it in the comments. It will be in the description on the replay. So those of you who are watching, wherever you're watching, it will be on the YouTube replay. So just go to the YouTube replay. All of her contact will be there. So the IG, the email, all of that. So you guys can check it out. But also I put it in the description. So, you know, I think that, you know, that's a good place to end it. You said a lot. I think this was a really helpful discussion. We have quite a few folks that are on the live stream.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, and I would say that too. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for joining, for engaging. There was a lot of comments, a lot of conversation. But I think your story needed to be heard. And we will do more conversations like this. You know, I always want to make sure that it's we make it a point for people to learn from people's experiences, right? We're not just going to talk about why we had a potential negative experience or what didn't work out or if we had to make a pivot, but like how can people learn from that and ensure that, as you said, we are clearing the path for you all, so you all can feel, you know, a little bit more comfortable and have a softer landing, as they say, when the time is when it becomes time for you to make the decision. So with that, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, share this with at least 3 people you know planning to move, visit, buy land in Ghana. People need to hear this story, so make sure you share it with them. Lenora says thank you for telling your story. Kwame says thank you. King Joseph says thank you. And I would also say, make sure you guys do hit the like button, because we are low on likes, and this is a really great conversation. Maya gave us some gems there. And so I want to thank you guys again, and I want to thank you, Maya, for taking the time to do this. So yeah, once again, thank you all, and we will see you all on the next video. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Joe. God bless everything you do.
Thank you.
Bye.